Dane Riven crouched behind a pile of collapsed crates on Outpost Aluria Station, a rust-eaten place reeking of desperation and stale air. The corridor lights overhead flickered, casting spectral shadows across the walkway. Piles of discarded personal belongings lay scattered, dolls with missing eyes, half-burned data pads, a single battered shoe. Refugees bustled around him, their gaunt faces a testament to diminishing supplies and fragile hope. He stood up cautiously, his boots sounding in steady taps against the old metal flooring. The station felt more like a labyrinth of sorrow than any recognizable port. Dane was no stranger to run-down outposts. He had survived enough contract runs to see every variety of misery. Here, however, the gloom was palpable, made heavier by the stench of old sweat and the constant hum of a failing environmental system. In his gloved hand, he clutched an emergency ration bar. He had only 2 left in his cargo jacket. They tasted like cardboard and regret, but they were vital in a place where hunger gnawed at the bones of everyone present. Lowering his gaze, Dane felt the tension in his shoulders, the knowledge that in this chaotic station, an extra morsel could provoke jealous anger or violence. For a moment, he considered consuming the ration bar himself, but from the corner of his eye, he observed a strange shape stirring. Pressed into a corner of the corridor, half hidden by a toppled stall, lay a creature, or perhaps a woman. It was difficult to tell at first. She had a wild mane of silver-white hair, ears that flickered, and a tail that lay limp behind her. A battered cloak concealed most of her, but her bare arms, heavily muscled and scarred, revealed an unearthly heritage. Human, but not human. An amalgam of something beastly and undeniably sentient. She breathed in shallow gulps, her face drawn with exhaustion. Instinct told Dane to move on. He had learned the hard way that pity could be a liability. Yet, as he stepped forward, he felt a pull, an unfamiliar tug at his conscience. If she died at his feet, could he live with it? He recalled the lifeless eyes of men he had turned away in the past. The memory etched into his mind. Turning to look at her once more, he saw her eyes blink open, gold and slitted like a great cat's. They met his, warily, searching, as if expecting cruelty. Dane sighed, then crouched again. He peeled back the metallic wrapping of the bar and broke off a piece, extending his hand. She stared at him, her eyes narrowed. Then, with trembling fingers tipped in short claws, she reached out, closing around the bar. Her nose twitched. She must have smelled the meager offering. Carefully, she lifted the portion to her lips and sniffed. Then she swallowed it down with surprising delicacy. Dane waited, letting her taste first. He wanted to show he meant no harm. After she finished the piece, he handed her the rest, ignoring the pang of hunger in his own stomach. Her eyes flicked from him to the bar and back again, uncertain. When she inhaled the last crumbs, she sat back, exhaling a low, rasping sigh. Then, she spoke in a guttural accent, one that grated like sand on metal. "You, food. My name's Dane," he replied quietly, trying not to draw attention from the passers-by. "That was my last ration bar. You need it more than I do." She nodded slowly, as though turning this gesture over in her mind. Then, she angled her head, ears perked forward. "Good, rations," she murmured, voice trembling. "Why? Why give?" Dane shrugged. "No reason in particular. Sometimes it's just the right thing to do." Her golden eyes flickered with something akin to recognition. She coughed, massaging her throat. "I hungry, not no money." Her lips parted, showing pointed canines. "You kind. IOWE. There's no debt here." He pushed himself to his feet and extended a hand. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe." She regarded him with suspicion, sniffing the air around him, then took his hand. As she rose, he realized she stood nearly as tall as he did, with broad shoulders and a sinewy, powerful build. The cloak fell back to reveal more of her lithe frame. An unmistakable strength thrummed beneath her skin. He could almost feel the tension coiled within her, a feral readiness to fight or flee. "Name?" she asked as they navigated the corridor. Weaving between the huddled forms of refugees, the flickering overhead lights gave her a spectral silhouette, her tufted ears casting long shadows across the metal wall. "Dane Riven," he said again, leading her toward a quieter corner of the station, a maintenance airlock that no one seemed to be using. He could hide her there for a moment, find a plan to get off this blasted station. "And you?" She opened her mouth, then hesitated. Her ears flattened slightly, as though uncertain how to form the word. "Call me Sarast." Dane acknowledged her softly. "Sarast. All right, let's see if we can't get you patched up. Maybe find some water and figure out our next move." In the distance, a child cried, and some poor soul coughed violently. A sense of futility swirled in the stagnant air. Dane was just a man with a battered starship, scraping a living on cargo runs. But as he looked at Sarast, he felt a strange sense of responsibility blossoming in his chest. She stared back, her feline eyes reflecting the faint glow of distant lights, and nodded in a gesture that seemed oddly solemn. Little did Dane know that in giving his last ration bar, he had unwittingly forged a bond that would alter the course of both their lives, a bond that would plunge them into ancient mysteries and dangers, where the survival of worlds hung in the balance. In the cramped alcove near the station's seldom-used maintenance airlock, Dane rummaged in his cargo pack. The overhead luminescence flickered, casting shifting patterns on Sarast's face. She watched him intently, leaning against a rusted bulkhead. Her tail flicked in slow arcs behind her legs, betraying a restless energy. He found a dented canteen of water. Though low, it sloshed gently, enough for at least a few mouthfuls. Handing it to Sarast, he watched as she tilted it to her lips, swallowing carefully. The tension in her shoulders seemed to ease. When she finished, she paused, eyes on him, and extended the canteen back. "Thank you," she said, voice still ragged but steadier. Her accent wrapped each syllable in a low, throaty purr. The words sounded foreign on her tongue, as though she were unaccustomed to using them frequently. Dane nodded. "I won't lie to you, rations are scarce here. That was my last bar. I've got an old ship docked in Bay 17. The job that brought me here didn't pay well, so I was hoping to pick up a small delivery on the way out to recoup costs." He paused, tapping his foot lightly on the deck. "But I guess if you're with me, that changes things." She tilted her head, ears perked. "With you," Dane sighed, rubbing a hand over his stubble-lined jaw. "Look, I'm just a cargo runner. Your presence might draw attention, and I'm not sure I want that. But I can't leave you here to starve." He hesitated, recalling the haunted stares of the station's inhabitants. "If you want a way out, maybe you can come with me, at least until we get off station. After that, we can figure out a better arrangement, if that's what you want." Her ears swiveled forward intently. She reached up and clasped his arm gently, her claws pricking the thick fabric of his jacket. "You helped me, gave me your last food. That means you are my provider." Her voice wavered, as though the concept held significant weight to her species. "I will protect you." A bemused chuckle escaped Dane's lips. "I don't need a bodyguard, just someone to watch my back from time to time, I guess." He tried to keep his tone light, but as Sarast's eyes narrowed in earnestness, He realized this was no casual promise. She meant every word. Quiet fell between them. The station's public address system crackled overhead, announcing departure schedules that never seemed to run on time. The stale odor of unwashed bodies drifted through from the corridor, reminiscent of a subterranean bazaar. Dane shook himself out of his reverie. "All right," he said, grabbing his pack. "Come on. If we sneak through these side corridors, we can avoid the main thoroughfare and slip onto my ship. With a bit of luck, we'll be off this station before any local tough guys decide to follow." Sarast nodded, tucking her cloak more securely around her. The motion revealed the strong lines of her shoulders and the distinct pattern of scars across her arms. Each jagged mark told a story of battle or hardship. Dane wondered what her past might be and why she was alone. They moved out into the corridor, hugging the rust-stained walls. At intervals, they paused to let groups of refugees pass, several times. Curious or hungry eyes locked onto them, drifting over the stranger with feline ears and a long tail. But the crowd's exhaustion outweighed any interest in confrontation, and the pair continued unimpeded. As they neared a junction, a muffled shout reached them. Dane peered around the corner and froze. 3 armed men in makeshift armor, each sporting heavy rifles, were rifling through crates. A hunched figure, likely a local vendor, knelt trembling at their feet. One of the men barked an order, and the vendor spilled the contents of his satchel, revealing cheap electronics and a few protein packets. Sarast tensed, her ears flattening. Dane placed a cautionary hand on her arm. "We can't help everyone," he whispered, his heart twisting at his own words. He had no illusions about being a hero. He was a survivor. Intervening now would only draw more trouble than they could handle. "We need to get to my ship. We'll never leave this station if we start a fight." Anger blazed briefly in Sarast's eyes, but she relented, stepping back. With careful steps, they skirted the perimeter, using crates and half-collapsed stalls for cover. Dane led her down an abandoned passageway, dimly lit by a single overhead strip that sizzled occasionally. The path opened onto a narrow catwalk lined with coolant pipes, a seldom-used maintenance route leading closer to Bay 17. Dane exhaled slowly as they walked, the tension in his chest lingering. "If times were different, I might have gone for those guys," he muttered. "But I can't risk it now." Sarast glanced at him from beneath her hood. "You do not fight for them, but you fight for me." The question stung him. He found himself unsure how to respond. "I don't know," he admitted at length. "All I know is you were alone, and I could do something about that. The entire station's on the brink of collapse. I can't save everyone, but maybe I can save one." Sarast nodded slowly, seeming to accept his words. They pressed on until they reached an unmarked steel hatch. Dane keyed in a manual override, and the hatch creaked open. Beyond lay the docking ring of Bay 17, poorly lit but mercifully quiet. The smell of engine grease and stale, recycled air replaced the oppressive stench of the refugee concourse. In the center of the bay stood Dane's ship. The horizon's wake, a small cargo vessel with scorched plating along her flank and one engine cowling partly disassembled. Though battered, she was his home and livelihood. He glanced around, expecting to see a docking supervisor or station guard, but no one lingered, apparently, in this failing outpost. The staff had long since abandoned formality. He gestured for Sarast to follow him up the loading ramp. The interior lights flickered as the onboard systems sensed his presence. He half expected some mechanical glitch to greet him, but instead, the lights stabilized and a low hum filled the corridors, a comforting sign that the reactor core still had some life left. Sarast stepped inside, glancing around. She sniffed the air, smells of metal, oil, Burnt things, she observed, her nose wrinkling slightly. Dane chuckled dryly. Yeah, she's not exactly fresh out of the shipyards, but she's mine. She'll get us out of here, if nothing else. They advanced toward the cockpit, passing stacked crates of cargo netting, old jumpsuits, and a half-assembled hoverbike. The overhead lighting was dim, tinted slightly amber by ancient tubing. Soon enough, they entered the cockpit, which boasted two worn pilot seats facing a console bristling with patchwork electronics. Dane took his place in the captain's chair, brushing away a stray data pad. He began powering up the ship's systems, fingers dancing across switches and touchscreens. The engines whined in protest, then roared to life, albeit with a hint of sputtering. "Good girl," he muttered under his breath. "Don't fail me now." As if in response, the console beeped, indicating a stable reactor output. Dane exhaled in relief and then tapped into the station's docking controls. "Clearance. Let's see," he murmured, scanning the code readouts. "Looks like station security's not even checking logs properly. We can probably slip away without paying any more fees." Sarast hovered near the doorway, eyes wide, tail swishing. The hum of the ship's engine seemed to stir something in her, maybe curiosity or excitement. She fixed her gaze on Dane. "So we fly," he nodded. "We fly. Once we're out of here, I need to find a quick job or some sort of contract so we can afford more supplies. We're running on fumes and scraps." She watched him quietly, her expression softening. "I owe you for the food, for helping me. This makes us a team." Despite the seriousness in her tone, Dane couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, let's call it that. A team. Welcome aboard, Sarast." She offered a tentative smile in return, her fangs glinting in the dim light. The overhead console beeped, announcing undocking procedures. Slowly, the docking clamps released, and the horizon's wake drifted away from the station, leaving behind the flickering corridors of the refugee outpost. Dane guided the ship through the rotating docking ring, accelerating once clear. Out the cockpit window, he glimpsed the station in its entirety for the first time. Rusted hull plating, mismatched modules, half-functioning external lights. Beyond it stretched the infinite darkness of space, stars twinkling with distant promise. "We're free," Dane said softly. He didn't look at Sarast, but he could sense her presence beside him, hear the quiet rasp of her breath. In that moment, a flicker of hope kindled in his chest. Perhaps he wasn't alone anymore, and neither was she, and so, with the rumbling engine and the uncertain alliance of a Beastwoman and a weary cargo runner, they set off into the void, neither realizing that their next stop would entangle them in an ancient mystery, a secret that had slumbered for millennia, waiting to be awakened by the hands of those desperate enough to tamper with it. Space unfolded before them like a grand tapestry of stars, punctuated by glowing nebulae and the faint silhouettes of distant freighters. The blackness felt almost peaceful after the claustrophobic corridors of Outpost Illuria. Sarast stood at the cockpit's rear, watching with rapt fascination. She had likely seen space before, Dane reasoned, but perhaps not from the vantage of a functioning starship. He flicked a few switches, verifying the autopilot course. They had burned enough fuel escaping the gravity well of the station to make him uneasy. The cargo runner life left little room for extravagance. "Okay, let's see what work is floating around," he murmured, tapping a console to scan the local job boards. While scanning, a faint beep indicated an incoming message, flagged with low priority. Curious, he opened it. The text displayed a series of coordinates and a short request. "Pick up sealed crate at Wayward Relay Station. Delivered to Helios Colony." The pay offered was meager, but it beat drifting aimlessly. All right, Helios Colony, he said. That's not too far off. Guess I'll give them a call. He jabbed at the screen, opening a communications channel. After a moment, a grainy image flickered into view, a man with a stern face, wearing the uniform of an independent shipping broker. Captain Riven, the man began, voice crackling through the old speakers. We received your interest in the crate job. Simple transport, no inspection, no fuss payment on delivery. Coordinates at Wayward Relay Station. Dane raised an eyebrow. No inspection. You want me to transport sealed cargo? That's correct, the broker said flatly. It must remain sealed. You do that, you get paid. Dane felt a prickle of unease. Sealed cargo often spelled trouble. Smuggling contraband, perhaps, but the pay, while not generous, might be enough to restock his supplies. Right now, he couldn't afford to be choosy. Fine, he said, glancing at Sarast. Send the final details. I'll pick it up. The broker nodded curtly before the screen went dark. A moment later, the job's details scrolled across Dane's console. Coordinates, deadlines. A cautionary note about not scanning the contents. He sighed, leaning back. All right, so that's our next stop. Could be shady, but we need the credits. Sarast padded over, her footsteps near silent. You worried? She asked, her accent laced with sincerity. Worried enough to keep my eyes open, he admitted. Wayward Relay is a quiet spot, usually just a fueling depot with some shady deals on the side. Let's hope this crate isn't going to explode on us. She nodded thoughtfully, then turned her gaze once more to the swirling void. Dane watched her for a moment, still intrigued by her blend of feral grace and vulnerability. There was more to Sarast than mere hunger and muscle. He wondered if she had a home somewhere, or if her kind was spread across the frontier. Yet every time he considered asking, the words stuck in his throat. Maybe in time, he thought. He set the autopilot to follow the route. It's a few hours to Wayward. If you want, you can explore the ship or grab some rest. There's a small bunk room 2 corridors down. She shrugged, a graceful roll of her shoulders. I will see. Her golden eyes flashed with curiosity. Do you trust me alone on your ship? Dane paused, meeting her gaze. In truth, leaving a near stranger with free run of his livelihood would normally make him uneasy. But something about Sarast, her gratitude, perhaps put him more at ease. I guess one do, he said simply. If you wanted to rob me, you'd have done it before I burned our fuel leaving the station. Her lips curved faintly, almost like a smile. Then I will not break your trust. I will look around. See the shape of this place. I want to know my new territory. He couldn't hide the grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Go ahead. Just don't press any big red buttons. She gave a mock salute, turning to exit the cockpit. Dane watched her go, the swish of her tail disappearing down the corridor. Then he exhaled, letting the tension seep from his limbs. He was used to being alone, perhaps too used to it. Having a companion, even one so unfamiliar, gave him a tentative sense of camaraderie. Whether that was good or bad remained to be seen. The next few hours passed in a subdued calm. Dane periodically checked the navigation readings, made minor course adjustments, and tried not to dwell on the potential dangers of the sealed cargo. Eventually, a small blip on the star map indicated they were nearing Wayward Relay Station, a lonely silhouette in the vast darkness. Flipping the comm, he hailed the station. Wayward Relay. This is the Horizon's Wake, requesting docking clearance. The reply crackled through. Horizon's Wake. Cleared for docking port beta. Please follow guide lights. No fueling available, our tanks are running low. Great, Dane thought, stifling a groan. The trip to Helios Colony would be tight on fuel. He guided the ship in with practiced precision. Wayward Relay Station came into view, a patchwork structure bristling with external antennae and sensor arrays, like a rusting insect adrift in space. Only a few docking ports seemed operational. The rest were either sealed off or dark. Sarast returned to the cockpit as Dane initiated docking procedures. She peered out the viewport, her ears tilting forward. This place feels quiet, abandoned. Dane nodded grimly. Nearly. Wayward's a place for hush-hush deals and minimal oversight. Rarely sees official traffic. We'll dock, grab the crate, and get out before anyone changes their mind. The docking clamps engaged with a jolt. Dane powered down most of the systems, leaving only minimal thrusters on standby. Turning to Sarast, he said, "Time to pick up that crate. Put your cloak on, some folks here might not appreciate unique travelers." She grimaced slightly, but complied, wrapping herself in the tattered material. Dane did the same with a battered jacket, making sure his sidearm was holstered discreetly. Then together, they descended the loading ramp into the dimly lit docking port. Wayward Relay's corridors felt stale and under-maintained. Flickering overhead lights revealed scuffed walls, exposed wiring, and sporadic signs of past firefights. The air carried a faint tang of ozone, a hint of old plasma discharge. The few people they passed hurried by without making eye contact, their faces hidden under hoods or behind makeshift masks. Eventually, they reached a small cargo office. The clerk, a wiry man with sunken eyes, barely looked up as they approached. "Yes," Dane cleared his throat. "I'm here for a sealed crate. Job reference 77B32. The clerk grunted, tapping a battered console. "Ah, yes." The crate arrived. "It's in storage bay 4. He eyed Sarast warily, noticing her unusual silhouette beneath the cloak, but he made no comment. "Someone's already paid for the crate's deposit. You just need to sign." Dane signed an electronic form, forging a name that was only half legible, a habit he'd picked up to maintain plausible deniability. The clerk produced a small data chip containing the crate's key code. "Storage bays down that hallway. Second door on the right. Don't break anything." With that, they were dismissed. Dane gestured for Sarast to follow. "Let's grab the crate and go." They found storage bay 4 with little difficulty. The heavy door hissed open, revealing a cramped space lined with metal shelves. Various crates, canisters, and sealed containers stood in haphazard stacks. A single overhead light buzzed with a faint hum. "Here," Dane said, pointing to a mid-sized crate with a sealed lid. A shipping label indicated Helios Colony. It looked nondescript, but the corners had heavy reinforcement, suggesting it carried something valuable or delicate. Sarast approached, sniffing the air. "Smells old." Dane inserted the data chip, and with a quiet hiss, the crate's lid unlocked. He resisted the urge to peek inside. A sealed job was a sealed job. Instead, he closed it again carefully and used the digital lock to secure it. Satisfied, he nodded to Sarast. "Let's haul it." She placed her hands on the crate's sides, lifting it with surprising ease. Dane raised an eyebrow. He was no weakling, but the weight of that container would normally require a heavy dolly or at least a second person to help. Sarast, however, handled it as though it were no more than a large piece of luggage. He silently thanked his luck for stumbling upon someone strong enough to expedite such tasks. They retraced their steps to the docking bay, earning only a few sidelong glances from the station's inhabitants. Within a short time, the crate was secured in the Horizon's Wake's small cargo hold, strapped down with thick webbing. Dane powered up the engines, the ship groaning as it disengaged from the station. Outside, Wayward, Relay shrank into the darkness, its flickering lights fading into distant pinpricks. He set a course for Helios Colony, triple checking the fuel calculations. It would be a close call, but they might make it. Sarast lingered near the cargo hold, eyeing the sealed crate. Dane joined her, crossing his arms. Curious what's inside, she nodded, ears flicking beneath the cloak. Yes, feels strange, heavy, but not metal. Dane shrugged, tapping the crate's label. The job says no inspection. We open it. We risk not getting paid. That's reason enough to leave it be. Sarast tilted her head, as though trying to interpret the crate's secrets through mere proximity. Then, she turned to Dane, eyes reflecting the overhead lighting. If trouble comes from it, we must be ready. He sighed. We will be. Trust me. I've done a dozen shady runs. Usually it's contraband or old relics people don't want going through official channels. Let's just get it delivered and collect our pay. She nodded, tension still coiling in her muscles. Sensing her unease, Dane placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, feeling the powerful sinews beneath her cloak. We'll be fine. A few days, and we can restock. Maybe buy a proper meal. Sarast took a slow breath, her tail curling around her leg. A proper meal, with you. Dane blinked, a faint grin tugging at his lips. Sure, I owe you one, anyway, after that meager ration bar. Besides, you're part of the crew now. Crew, she echoed, her voice carrying a note of shy warmth. For a moment, her fierce exterior softened, revealing someone not so different from himself, tired, hungry for stability, and hopeful for a better tomorrow. All right, he said, giving the crate one last look. Let's get this done. Helios Colony. Here we come. He headed for the cockpit, feeling Sarast's presence at his back. The ship's engines thrummed, carrying them deeper into the void. As they accelerated toward their destination, neither of them knew that the crate and what lay within would mark the beginning of a journey beyond mere survival. In the cold silence of space, fate was weaving their paths together, setting the stage for an ancient legacy to rise once more. The horizon's wake sliced through the darkness, its engines leaving a faint ion trail that shimmered against the star-filled backdrop. The first day en route to Helios Colony passed without incident and uneventful drift, broken only by routine navigation checks and the low hum of life support. Dane tried to occupy himself by running system diagnostics. He discovered a few minor issues in the port engine's cooling system, but nothing critical. Each hiss of steam or blinking red icon reminded him how rickety this ship truly was. Yet it had seen him through so many tight scrapes that he trusted it more than he trusted most people. Occasionally, he caught Sarast studying the sealed crate in the cargo hold. She never touched it, but her golden eyes lingered, her ears twitching with curiosity. When he questioned her, she would only shrug, half mumbling about picking up strange scents. On the second day, something changed. Dane was in the cockpit, verifying star charts, when an odd beep echoed from the console. A faint flicker skittered across the communications panel. He leaned forward, frowning. That's strange, he muttered under his breath. We're receiving some kind of short-range signal, but there's nothing on the scanners. The pulse repeated, static-laden and intermittent. Curious. Dane tried to interpret it. It sounded like an old code. An archaic form of data burst rarely used outside specialized research stations. He tapped a few commands, isolating the frequency. To his surprise, the signal seemed to be emanating from within the ship itself. A chill crept down his spine. He tapped a few more controls, tracing the origin. Cargo bay, he murmured. That's not possible. Heart pounding. He activated the internal sensors. Sure enough, The signal's point of origin coincided with the sealed crate. He felt a weight settle in his gut. Something inside that crate was transmitting. That was never a good sign. Sarast. He called out over the ship's intercom. "Meet me in the cargo bay." A few moments later, he hurried into the hold. Sarast was already there, standing rigidly near the crate. Her tail thrashed, and her ears were flattened against her head. "I smell ozone," she said softly, eyes locked on the container, like lightning, but inside. Dane nodded, trying to keep his voice calm. "There's a transmission coming from inside, low power, but repeating in bursts." Sarast bared her fangs in a silent snarl, glancing at him in question. He exhaled. "We're not supposed to open it, but if it's broadcasting a signal, that could lead to trouble. We have to decide which is worse, breaking the job's contract or letting the broadcast continue." She placed a clawed hand on the crate's surface. "Danger," she murmured. "Could be a tracker or a beacon." He swallowed. A tracker would be disastrous, leading pirates or worse straight to them. A beacon might be summoning help or something far more malevolent. The small hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. "All right," he said, jaw tightening. "We'll open it, carefully. Better to face the consequences of a breach of contract than get ambushed by unknown hostiles." Sarast gave a curt nod. She slipped her claws into the crate's reinforced corners. Dane punched in the digital lock override. With a hydraulic hiss, the lid slid back, revealing thick layers of padding. Gently, they peeled away the protective foam until at last they saw the cargo, a strange device, cylindrical, about the size of a large canister. Its surface gleamed with an iridescent sheen, etched with complex geometric patterns that made Dane's eyes ache if he stared too long. An otherworldly hum seemed to emanate from it, barely audible. The patterns, reminiscent of some lost civilization, were unlike any known standard script or interface. A small diode pulsed with a soft green glow. "What in the void?" Dane whispered, reaching out gingerly. "This must be some piece of alien tech, possibly a relic." Sarast inhaled sharply, her ears perking. "It's alive?" she asked, voice thick with uncertainty. She leaned closer, whiskers quivering. "Smells ancient." Dane wasn't sure how to process that. The transmissions continued in soft bursts, as if the device was attempting to communicate or connect with something. Wiping sweat from his brow, he muttered, "We can't just put it back in the crate and pretend we don't know. We need to figure out how to shut off the signal." Sarast nodded. "Or it will call others." A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the faint hum of the device. Swallowing hard, Dane knelt and examined it. He could see no obvious control panel. Wires ran along the canister's exterior, merging into intricate patterns that flowed across its surface. He tried pressing a finger against a faintly glowing symbol. Immediately, a resonance pulsed through his arm, making his heart skip a beat. Jerking back, he hissed, "Okay, that's weird. It's not static electricity, it's like some kind of energy field." Sarast placed a hand on his shoulder, concern flickering in her eyes. "Enough. Let me try." Dane started to protest, but she was already moving. With careful deliberation, she extended a claw, touching a different symbol. The device pulsed again, and the green diode changed to a faint orange. Sarast froze, her eyes widening as though she were hearing something inaudible. A second later, she snatched her hand back. The canister's hum subsided slightly, but the signal did not cease. She blinked, regaining her balance. I felt voices or memories pressed against my mind. "It's not right." Her breath came quickly, and she steadied herself with a hand on the crate. We should wrap it up again. Maybe we can contain the transmission if we block the signals with some insulation. Dane nodded, his mind reeling. I'll check if we have any frequency dampeners or sensor baffles. He rummaged through a crate of ship supplies, eventually finding an old dampener device used to mask cargo from standard scans. He placed it around the alien canister, adjusting the parameters. The hum remained, but the communications console overhead indicated the external transmissions had ceased, at least for now. They carefully sealed the crate again, securing the new dampener in place. Dane sank onto a nearby container, exhaling slowly. That was too close. We still have at least a day or two of travel left. We'd better keep an eye out for any unwanted visitors. Sarast's tail flicked anxiously. We are dealing in something dangerous. Our buyer must know. Perhaps they wanted to smuggle it without letting anyone scan it. Dane nodded. Likely. I just hope our buyer doesn't plan on using it for anything catastrophic. Alien relics can fetch enormous sums on the black market, especially if they're rumored to have power or knowledge. Rising, he placed a hand on Sarast's shoulder. We'll watch each other's backs. All right. Her expression softened. Yes, I guard you. You guard me. We endure together. He mustered a faint grin in return. Yes, exactly. They left the cargo bay, tension still thrumming in the air. Dane returned to the cockpit, scanning for any sign of ships on their tail. The monitors showed empty space. The autopilot beeped softly, confirming the course to Helios Colony. With a weary sigh, he decided to keep watch rather than rest. Hours passed, each moment weighted by the knowledge that a mysterious device lay in their hold. A relic that hummed with energies they could barely comprehend. Sarast paced occasionally, her steps silent, as if her instincts told her that at any moment danger might erupt from the shadows. But as the third day approached, something unexpected happened. The communications console flared, detecting a faint presence on their long-range sensors. A single ship, bearing no identifiable transponder, was approaching from the rear quadrant, moving fast. Dane's heart pounded as he toggled the sensors. They're on an intercept course, he muttered. They're not broadcasting any identification. No standard hail. Sarast stepped into the cockpit behind him, her ears alert. Pirates, he grimaced. Possible. Or they might be the rightful owners of that relic. Coming to reclaim it. Either way, we can't outrun them if they have a more powerful engine. A cold sweat broke out across his forehead. He didn't fancy a direct confrontation in open space. The horizon's wake had minimal armaments, just an old pulse turret, good for fending off small raiders. Let me think, he breathed, scanning for possible hideouts or friendly stations. He found none. The star map was starkly empty. Only a small planetoid cluster lay about half a day's travel away. Helios Colony was nearly another full day beyond that. The unknown vessel, meanwhile, would catch up in mere hours. All right, he said, voice strained. We might have to face them or try some trick to slip past. We can't just wait for them to board us unopposed. Sarast's claws flexed reflexively. I can fight. If they board, they'll find me unwelcoming. Despite the dire situation, Dane almost smiled at her fierce determination. I have no doubt. Let's see if we can do something more cunning first. Maybe we can mask our heat signature, drift, pretend we're debris, and let them pass. He quickly began adjusting the ship's systems to run at minimal power. The engines quieted to a low hum, the lights dimming until only emergency illumination remained. They would appear on sensors as a cold, drifting object if they timed it right. If the approaching ship had standard scanning equipment, it might pass them by. Sarast watched tensely as Dane maneuvered them into a slow drift behind a small field of rock fragments, remnants of some long-forgotten asteroid collision. The logic was simple: hide among the debris, reduce emissions, and hope the pursuers did not have advanced scanning technology. The minutes stretched painfully. The console displayed the unidentified vessel's approach vector. It gradually neared, scanning the area. Dane and Sarast kept their eyes on the readouts, barely daring to breathe. If the ruse failed, they would have to either flee at full burn or engage in a fight they were ill-prepared for. Within the cockpit's dim glow, Dane felt Sarast's presence at his side, her body coiled tight with anticipation. He forced himself to stay calm, to keep breathing at a measured pace. At last, the sensors showed the unidentified ship passing the edge of the debris field. Its trajectory slowed, as though searching. Time seemed to stand still. The distance readout ticked down, then suddenly began to rise again. With a lingering sweep, the unknown craft accelerated away, continuing on a vector that missed the horizon's wake by a slim margin. Relief crashed over Dane like a tidal wave. They had avoided detection for now. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Sarast exhaled softly, her posture easing. "Looks like we got lucky," he said, voice trembling slightly. Sarast just nodded, her gaze intense. Dane slowly reactivated the ship's systems, bringing the engines back to operational power. The rock fragments slipped away behind them, drifting peacefully in the cosmic tide. They set course once again for Helios Colony, picking up speed. Sitting back in the pilot's chair, Dane ran a shaky hand through his hair. That was too close. If that relic is broadcasting more than we realize, we might see more of those ships. Sarast's tail flicked uneasily. We must hurry, deliver it, and be rid of its burden. He agreed wholeheartedly. Yet unease curled in his stomach. Something told him that delivering this device to the unknown broker on Helios Colony would not mark the end of their troubles. It might just be the beginning. Still, he pushed those fears aside. Survival first, then speculation. With renewed determination, he guided the horizon's wake onward. The hum of the engines once again, their only lullaby in the endless night. The strangest cargo run of Dane Riven's life was far from over, and as he and Sarast stared into the star-flecked void, they couldn't know the ancient forces that stirred, awakened by an object that refused to remain silent. Helios Colony orbited a small yellow star in a region of space dotted with charted trade routes. Dane had visited once before, years earlier, but he recalled little aside from the colony's frontier, like atmosphere and sprawling port city. As the horizon's wake approached, he scanned the planet's surface on the console. Large continents, swirling seas, and wide bands of greenery indicated a relatively hospitable environment. The docking control tower responded promptly to his hail. A crisp female voice directed him to landing pad C-17 at the main starport, Nova Aurea. Dane followed the approach vector, guiding the battered ship down through the planet's atmosphere. Flames licked the hull briefly during atmospheric entry, making the vessel shake. Sarast clutched the back of the co-pilot's seat, her pupils widening, but she remained silent. Within minutes, they touched down on a reinforced concrete platform, ringed by blinking guide lights. Overhead, the sky shimmered with pastel hues as dusk settled, painting the horizon in streaks of purple and amber. "All right," Dane said, powering down the engines. "We made it. Let's not waste time. The sooner we hand over this crate, the sooner we get paid, and the sooner it's someone else's problem." Sarast nodded, tension still evident in the set of her shoulders. Together, they moved to the cargo hold. With a wary glance, they checked the crate. The dampener device was still attached. No signs of tampering. Carefully, They unstrapped it. Outside, the starport bustled with activity. Mechanical loaders roamed the tarmac, moving cargo under the watchful eyes of ground crews. Ships of various shapes and sizes lined the hangars, some sleek and modern, others as ramshackle as the horizon's wake. Vendors sold reconstituted meals from kiosks, and maintenance personnel hustled to service newly arrived freighters. Dane had arranged to meet the contact at a private warehouse on the outskirts of the port, away from prying eyes. They transferred the crate onto a rented grav sled, then quietly navigated the winding lanes that stretched between stacked shipping containers and towering hangars. The hum of the grav sled was a constant, low vibration that set Dane's teeth on edge. Sarast walked beside him, hood drawn low. A few passers-by shot curious looks in her direction, but most seemed too busy to care. Helios Colony was no stranger to diverse species, but her feline features still drew attention. Eventually, they reached an aging warehouse marked with the same reference number as their job. The large sliding door squeaked open, revealing a dim interior lit by flickering overhead lamps. Crates and barrels were piled high, forming a maze of corridors. A solitary figure stood in the center, holding a data pad. He was tall and lean, with neatly combed white hair and a face set in stern lines. A hint of military bearing clung to his posture. He observed them silently as they approached, eyes flicking from Dane to Sarast and back again. "You have the cargo?" he asked in a smooth, low voice. Dane nodded. "Sealed crate, as requested. Payment first." The man's lips curved in a faint smile. "Of course." He tapped a command on his data pad, and Dane's own device beeped, confirming the deposit of credits. The sum was correct if modest, enough for fuel supplies, and maybe a few repairs. Satisfied, Dane nodded at Sarast. She guided the grav sled forward until the crate rested before the man. He produced a scanning device and ran it over the container. The reading displayed on his data pad. "Everything seems in order. We appreciate your discretion." Dane allowed himself a small sigh of relief. "Then we're done here. Pleasure doing business." The man tilted his head, regarding Sarast with interest. "Your companion. I haven't seen one of her kind on Helios. Unusual to see a Beastwoman venturing so far from certain fringe worlds." She stiffened, but said nothing. Dane shrugged, keeping his tone cool. "She's my partner. Not for sale." The man smiled thinly. "No offense meant. Merely curious." Dane suppressed a shudder. Something about this man's gaze felt predatory. "We'll be going now," he said, turning on his heel. Sarast followed, her tail flicking. The man's eyes tracked them until they disappeared through the warehouse door. Outside, the air felt muggy, heavy with the promise of rain. Dane exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. "Let's pick up supplies and get out of here." "I don't want to stick around any longer than we need to." Sarast nodded, her ears half lowered. "Agreed." That man, his scent was cold, like a predator. Dane snorted softly. "We're in the business of predators, apparently." They headed back to the ship, weaving through narrow alleys. Neon signs flickered overhead, advertising everything from engine parts to black market relics. Despite the colony's outward civility, Dane sensed an undercurrent of danger. This was a frontier settlement, a place where ambition and lawlessness mingled freely. Upon reaching the starport, they used the newly acquired credits to buy fuel and a scant stock of ration bars. Dane grimaced at the high prices. The local market was clearly skewed toward extracting every last credit from weary travelers. At least with the job complete, they might escape any further entanglements. As they neared the horizon's wake, however, an unwelcome surprise awaited. Standing by the ship's loading ramp were two men wearing dark uniforms with an insignia. Dane didn't recognize an emblem shaped like a stylized serpent coiled around a star. One man held a datapad, while the other cradled a sleek rifle. Dane halted, cursing under his breath. Saras tensed at his side, her tail giving a wary lash. The men spotted them immediately. The one with the datapad stepped forward, a tight smile on his lips. "Captain Riven, is it?" he said in a carefully measured tone. "We represent certain interested parties. We'd like a moment of your time." Dane forced a polite grin. "Afraid I don't have any time to spare. If you need a cargo run, you can talk to me tomorrow. I'm off duty." The man chuckled without humor. "We understand you delivered a certain crate to a warehouse a short time ago. We are concerned about the nature of that cargo. Might you enlighten us as to who hired you and what exactly was inside?" Dane's heart skipped. "I'm under contract to maintain confidentiality," he lied, though it was technically true about the sealed aspect. The man's smile tightened. "Yes, of course. However, we believe the cargo in question may be stolen property. We have reason to suspect it could pose a threat to the security of Helios Colony." Sarast let out a low growl, and the man's companion shifted his grip on the rifle. Tension crackled in the air. Dane sized up the situation. These men had an air of authority, but not official starport security or local police. "If you have a problem," he said, keeping his voice level, "take it up with my employer. I was just the delivery boy." The man inclined his head. "We certainly intend to, but we believe you may hold vital information. Please come with us for a brief questioning." Dane stiffened, his pulse pounding. "I'm not obligated to do that." He placed a hand gently on Sarast's arm, hoping to calm her before she sprang into action. The man with the datapad sighed. "I was hoping you'd be cooperative. We can settle this quickly if you share what you know. Otherwise, we'll have to take you in." His companion raised the rifle, pointing it at them in a not-so-subtle threat. Sarast's eyes narrowed, claws flexing. Dane's mind raced. He didn't fancy a firefight in the middle of the starport. That would draw local security, or worse, put them on the run with no safe haven. "All right," he said, forcing calm. "We'll talk, but not here in the open." The man nodded, appearing satisfied. He gestured toward a nearby side door leading to a disused maintenance corridor. "After you." Dane and Sarast exchanged glances. Slowly, they headed toward the indicated passage, the rifle-wielding guard trailing behind them. The corridor was dimly lit, with thick pipes running along the walls. A faint hiss of steam escaped a nearby valve. The man with the datapad stepped into the corridor, glancing around to ensure privacy. Suddenly, with a flash of movement, Sarast lunged. She slammed the rifle barrel upwards, knocking the guard off balance. At the same time, she swiped at the other man's datapad, sending it clattering to the ground. He cursed, trying to yank a sidearm free. Dane reacted instantly, driving his elbow into the guard's gut. The guard doubled over, losing grip on the rifle. Sarast wrested it away, tossing it aside. Before the second man could level his sidearm, she kicked out, striking his wrist and sending the weapon spinning across the floor. Panting, Dane pinned the guard's arm behind his back. "We're not interested in your interrogation," he growled. "Stay out of our business." The man with the datapad gritted his teeth, face twisted in pain. "You fools have no idea what you're doing. If that artifact is unleashed, countless lives could be at risk." His voice trembled with anger. Dane felt a chill. "What artifact?" The man spat, refusing to say more. Sarast growled, pressing him harder. "Tell us," she demanded. He glared at her with palpable hatred. "You'll regret crossing us. We are the vigil of the serpent. We have eyes everywhere. That relic you delivered is far more than you suspect. If you, a sudden wailing siren cut through the air, echoing down the corridor. Boots thudded against the floor as approaching starport security hurried toward the disturbance. Dane cursed. "We have to go," he said, releasing the guard and shoving him away. Sarast tossed the other man aside. Without another word, they bolted from the corridor, weaving through the starport's labyrinthine back paths until they reached the horizon's wake. Security personnel were scattered about, responding to the commotion, but none recognized them in time to halt their escape. They dashed up the loading ramp, sealing it behind them. "Get us out of here," Sarast hissed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "Now!" Dane didn't need further prompting. He sprinted to the cockpit and fired up the engines. The horizon's wake roared to life, rattling the docking clamps. Ignoring the starport's frantic calls for authorization, he punched the thrusters, blasting off the pad in a swirl of dust and sparks. The control tower's angry voice crackled over the comm, demanding they stand down. Dane ignored it, directing the ship skyward. Within minutes, they broke through the lower atmosphere, climbing rapidly toward the safety of space. Alarms blared on the console, indicating a lock-on from surface-based defense scanners. But no missiles fired. Perhaps the local authorities were more bark than bite, or they were too slow to react fully. As the colony's clouds gave way to the star-studded darkness of orbit, Dane risked a glance at Sarast. She stood behind the co-pilot's chair, chest heaving, eyes fierce. "You all right?" She nodded, though her claws still trembled slightly. "Yes, we got away," Dane exhaled. "For now. But the vigil of the serpent, whoever they are, knows about us. We've stirred a hornet's nest." Sarast bared her teeth in a grim approximation of a smile. "Then we face them, if we must. We will not run forever," he grimaced. "Running might still be our best plan for the moment. Let's jump to a system where we can lay low, figure out our next move." His mind reeled at the man's warning about an artifact. Could that device in the crate truly be so dangerous? But they had delivered it, so it was no longer his concern, or so he tried to tell himself. Except, deep down, a gnawing sense of guilt took hold. Had they inadvertently unleashed something terrible on the galaxy? Shaking off the thought, he initiated the FTL drive, charting a random course to a less traveled region. The engine spooled up, humming with power. The horizon shimmered as the ship prepared for faster-than-light translation. Before the final jump, Dane cast one last look at Helios colony shrinking behind them. In the distance, the curve of the planet glowed with city lights, oblivious to the relic that might threaten its future. With a roar, the horizon's wake vanished into the swirling depths of hyperspace, leaving Helios and its shadows behind, at least for a time. The swirling kaleidoscope of hyperspace encompassed the horizon's wake, casting shifting shadows across the cockpit. Dane stared at the console readouts, verifying their course. They were headed to an isolated region known as the Shale Drift, a scattering of minor worlds and asteroid belts, typically overlooked by major trade routes. He had no plan beyond hiding out for a while, but he needed somewhere to think, somewhere away from the Vigil's reach. The hair-raising encounter on Helios colony still rattled him. He had expected shady deals, maybe a double cross but not a fanatical organization, claiming the cargo was an apocalyptic threat. Sarast sat in the co-pilot's seat, studying the swirling patterns of hyperspace through the viewport. Her tail curled around the base of her chair. "So, that group, the Vigil of the Serpent," she said, her voice subdued. "You think they're telling the truth? That the relic is dangerous?" Dane sighed, leaning back. "Hard to say. Could be fear-mongering. Or they might actually know something." That device was certainly broadcasting weird signals. Doesn't make it a doomsday weapon, though. She nodded slowly. But you feel uncertain. I can see it in your eyes. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. I delivered the crate. I'm just a courier, not a hero. If it's truly dangerous, it's out of my hands now. Saras turned her gaze on him. Her golden eyes gleamed, reflecting the hyperspace corridor. Sometimes, we can't run from what we've done. Maybe we should find out more, so we're not blind. Dane wanted to argue, to remind her that the job was finished. He had neither the resources nor the desire to meddle with clandestine artifacts. But a heavy pang of guilt tugged at him. Could he really ignore the possibility that his delivery might harm countless lives? He shook the thought away. They had bigger immediate problems. We need to stay off the Vigil's radar. They'll probably be looking for us after that scuffle. Sarast inclined her head. So, we hide. Gather information. Then, decide. Yeah, he said, forcing a smile. Exactly. Let's lay low. Do some digging. If we discover something truly catastrophic, maybe we figure out a way to fix it. She accepted that, turning her attention back to the viewport. Minutes passed in a tense silence, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. Hyperspace travel always felt eerie, like floating in a timeless sea of shifting colors. Dane never fully relaxed until they dropped back to normal space. After a few hours, the console beeped, indicating their exit point approached. Dropping out of hyperspace in 3, 2, 1. He flipped several switches, and the swirling tunnel collapsed into starlight. Before them stretched a sparse field of asteroids, bathed in the pale light of a distant sun. The shale drift. True to its name, the space around them was littered with rocky debris. A few planetoids hovered in the far distance. The area appeared quiet, no immediate signs of other vessels. Dane performed a quick scan. No major energy signatures. Good. We can pick an asteroid to land on. Maybe find some resources. Sarast's ears twitched. Land. On a rock. He grinned wryly. Some are big enough to have microgravity, or at least a stable surface for the ship. We can park, reduce our power output, stay hidden. She nodded, though skepticism flickered in her eyes. If you say so. Dane maneuvered the ship carefully. Weaving through drifting rocks, he identified a moderate-sized asteroid with relatively flat terrain. Using minimal thrusters, he eased the horizon's wake down onto the surface, the landing gear scraping against loose gravel. A faint cloud of dust rose and settled slowly in the low gravity. Once secure, he powered down non-essential systems. The ship fell into an almost contemplative hush. Through the cockpit window, they could see the stars twinkling, the sun's weak light casting long shadows. Well, he said, standing up. It's not exactly a 5-star hotel, but it should keep us hidden for a while. Sarast rose as well. We have food, water. He nodded. We've got enough rations for a few days. Water's rationed, but we can manage. The idea of returning to those tasteless bars made him grimace, but it was better than starving. They stepped into the corridor that led toward the mess area. The flickering overhead lights cast shifting patterns on the walls. Dane opened a storage compartment, retrieving the newly purchased rations. He tossed one to Sarast, then took one for himself. Not exactly gourmet, he apologized, biting into the bar with a resigned sigh. She studied the wrapper, then peeled it open with her claws. One tentative sniff later, she took a bite. Tastes like dust, but a little sweet, she commented, half to herself. Dane forced a smile. Yeah, it's an acquired taste. As they ate, the corridor lights suddenly dimmed and flared again. Then the ship's internal sensors sounded a faint warning chime. Dane's pulse quickened. What now? Hurrying to the nearest control panel, he brought up the diagnostics. A wave of faint energy fluctuations pulsed through the ship's systems. The readout indicated an unknown source. This is some kind of electromagnetic interference, he muttered. Sarast came to his side, tension radiating from her posture. Could it be from the outside? He tapped the console, scanning external readings. There's no strong external field. It's internal. His eyes widened, a sense of déjà vu washing over him. Oh no, did they leave something behind? Or his thoughts snapped to the relic. Although they no longer had it, the memory of its presence haunted him. Could something else be aboard? That was impossible. The crate was gone. Yet the interference persisted. Suddenly, a low hum filled the corridor, reminiscent of the relic's resonance. Dane's blood ran cold. That's the same frequency. I recognize it. Without waiting, he dashed to the cargo hold, Sarast on his heels. When they arrived, the hold was empty except for their personal crates and the deck plating. No sign of any foreign device, but the hum grew louder, echoing strangely, as if from the ship's walls. Sarast's ears flattened. Something is here, or some echo. Dane rubbed his temples, trying to think. The crate was gone, delivered days ago, yet the ship's sensors indicated a pocket of distorted spacetime, swirling near the place where the artifact once rested. He keyed in a manual override for the hold's environment sensors, and the screen displayed an anomaly faint, intangible, but present. It's like a residual afterimage, he said, voice hushed. A lingering energy signature left behind by that device. Maybe it imprinted on the ship somehow. Sarast approached the spot, her head tilting as if listening for a whisper. I feel something, she murmured, like someone calling. Her words sent shivers down Dane's spine. He carefully drew closer. The air felt thicker, charged with static. Even the hair on his arms stood on end. Suddenly, a flicker of light arced across the hold, forming a translucent shape that wavered in midair. It resembled an ethereal swirl of silvery mist, twisting as though animated by an unseen breeze. Within it, fleeting images coalesced, a cityscape of towering spires, an ancient library of stone tablets, an alien figure with elongated limbs, reaching out. Dane recoiled, heart pounding. What in the void? Sarast stood transfixed, her eyes locked on the apparitions. The shapes flickered again, shifting into scenes of war, armored soldiers, marching under a star-filled sky, beams of light unleashing destruction upon a city. Then the vision vanished, as abruptly as it appeared, leaving only the humming residue in its wake. For a breathless moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Sarast managed a shaky whisper. What was that? Dane shook his head, adrenaline thrumming. I don't know. It must be an echo of the relic's data or memory. Some advanced technology that can store and transmit images directly into our minds. She wrapped her arms around herself, trembling slightly. I saw. Ruin.pain. What kind of artifact carries such visions? He tried to steady his breathing. Something beyond our understanding. Maybe a repository of knowledge from a lost civilization, or a weapon that uses mental projections. They hovered there, uncertain. The humming gradually diminished, and the normal hush of the cargo hold returned. Yet the memory lingered, etched into their minds. Dane finally tore his gaze away from the empty air. We can't just ignore this, he said hoarsely. If that device is capable of projecting such images, it might hold records of an entire civilization's downfall, and we delivered it to someone we don't even know. Sarast's voice trembled with suppressed anger. Then we must get it back. We must keep it from those who would abuse it, he scoffed, though the idea had already taken root in his mind. Getting it back. It's likely under heavy guard now, or already on its way to some black market auction. We don't know where it is. She faced him, her golden eyes fierce. We can find out. We can track the vigil or your employer. We can uncover who truly holds it. Dane closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the situation. Every survival instinct urged him to walk away. But the images he'd seen cities aflame, the tortured expressions of an unknown people burrowed into his conscience. We might be in over our heads, he warned. We're just two people with a rickety ship. Sarast set her jaw. Maybe. But I owe you my life, and I will not stand by while such a threat exists. My people know the cost of war. If that device can unleash such destruction, we must act. He saw the conviction in her eyes and felt a stirring within himself. He had run from trouble most of his life, but something about this forced him to confront a deeper responsibility. All right, he conceded softly. Let's do it, but we'll need a plan, and we'll need help. A flicker of relief crossed Sarast's face. Yes, help. Dane nodded grimly, stepping away from the anomaly site. First, let's see if we can gather intelligence. I have a few old contacts, though they're not exactly reliable. We should also be wary of the vigil of the serpent. They might be chasing the artifact too. She inclined her head. And if they are, then perhaps we share a common enemy. Or they are also an enemy. Hard to say. They exchanged a look, both realizing how murky the path ahead was. Allies and foes could swap roles in a heartbeat, but at least they had each other. The cargo hold light flickered once more, then steadied. The echo had faded, leaving behind only silence and the certainty that something apocal was unfolding, with them at its center. Dane gritted his teeth, adrenaline still coursing in his veins. All right, he said. We head out. We find leads. We figure this out. Sarast placed a reassuring hand on his arm, her gaze steady. In that unspoken gesture, they formed a pact to confront a threat neither fully understood, bound by duty, guilt, and a shared sense of honor. And so, the horizon's wake would not remain hidden in the shale drift. With new resolve, they would chart a course back into the shadows of the galaxy, racing against forces they had only begun to fathom. All for the sake of an alien relic that called out across time and space. It took 2 days for Dane and Sarast to settle on a plan. Those days were spent scouring the ship's limited database, cross-referencing old flight logs, and pooling what few contacts Dane could trust. The anomaly in the cargo hold had faded, but its memory burned. Neither of them could shake the vivid images or the sense of looming calamity. Finally, a lead surfaced. A data broker named Sorrel Kane, known to deal in obscure relic trades, was rumored to frequent a forgotten outpost called Garrus Rift. It was a backwater station perched on the edge of a gas giant's ring system. Dane had done a job there once, delivering scrap metals. If anyone could point them toward the crate's current whereabouts or the whereabouts of the client who purchased it, Kane might. We head to Garrus Rift, Dane announced, standing at the cockpit console. Sarast, at his side, listened intently. I can't guarantee Kane will help us, but for the right price, he might. We have some credits left. Maybe we can bribe him. She flexed her claws. If that fails, we can use other means. Dane forced a grim smile. Let's keep violence as a last resort. I'd prefer not to escalate until we know what we're up against. Sarast nodded, her tail flicking once in agreement. Understood. Dane punched in the coordinates, and the horizon's wake lifted off from the asteroid. He navigated cautiously through the shale drift before punching the FTL drive. With a roar, the ship slipped back into hyperspace, carrying them toward Garrus Rift. The transition took nearly a day. Hyperspace storms in this region meant the journey was anything but smooth. Turbulent eddies buffeted the ship, forcing Dane to constantly adjust the stabilizers. By the time they emerged into normal space, both he and Sarast felt drained, though neither admitted it. Garrus Rift appeared on the sensors, a sprawling station cobbled together from older modules, orbiting a swirling gas giant. Its outer plating was pockmarked, the station's lights flickering intermittently. From afar, it looked like a metallic vulture picking at the bones of cosmic debris. Dane sighed. Not exactly a vacation spot. Sarast studied the view, her ears angled forward. Better than Outpost Eluria, he chuckled wryly. Marginally. They received docking clearance without fuss. Garrus Rift had minimal security, merely concerned with collecting docking fees. After touching down in a cramped bay, Dane powered down the ship. The interior was dim, lit by flickering neon signs that bled in from outside. "Ready?" he asked Sarast, who stood by the loading ramp, checking her cloak. She nodded, pulling the hood low over her face. "Lead on." They disembarked into the docking bay's stale air. The station's corridors were narrow, cluttered with haphazardly placed kiosks and grimy pipes overhead. Vendors hawked questionable goods, synthetic meats, cheap trinkets, unverified relic shards. The crowd comprised a hodgepodge of species, each more desperate than the last. Dane navigated the winding routes with practiced caution, keeping a hand near his concealed sidearm. Sarast followed like a silent wraith, her eyes scanning for threats. They passed a row of battered shops and eventually came to a neon-lit door labeled Sorrel KAYNS Data Exchange. Inside, the shop was cramped, lined with flickering monitors and old server racks. A single desk stood at the center, behind which sat a lanky man with messy hair. He wore thick goggles perched on his forehead and tapped furiously at a tablet. That had to be Sorrel Kane. Without looking up, Kane spoke, voice high and reedy. "If you're here to buy contraband data, prices start at 1,000 credits per gig. If you're selling, you'd better have something interesting." Dane cleared his throat. "We're looking for information, specifically about a certain relic, alien in nature, delivered recently to Helios Colony. Word is you might have leads." At that, Kane paused, raising his goggles to stare at Dane. Recognition sparked in his eyes. "Dane Riven. Right. We crossed paths a few cycles back." His gaze flicked to Sarast, curiosity evident. "Who's your friend?" Sarast offered no greeting, merely a watchful glare from beneath her hood. Dane replied, "She's my partner. Look, Kane, we need your help. We're prepared to pay." Kane sniffed, setting the tablet aside. "You have credits. Or do you want to trade in something else?" Dane slid a credit chip across the desk, enough to pique interest, but not so much as to appear gullible. "We can negotiate, but no games." Kane inspected the chip, then nodded. "Fair enough. Let's see. Rumors have been flying about an alien device changing hands on Helios. Something some organization called the Vigil of the Serpent was after. Could be the same item." He typed rapidly on his terminal, scanning lines of text. Word is, it wasn't just sold. It was moved off colony to an undisclosed site in the frontier. Dane leaned forward. "Any clue where?" Kane paused, adjusting his goggles. "I've heard whispers of a secret facility in a system called Varlin's Vale. Lots of hush-hush shipments going there lately. No official records, of course, but enough hints to suspect that's where it went." Sarast's ears twitched. A private facility. For what purpose? The data broker shrugged. Could be a lab, a cult hideout, or something else entirely. All I know is that shipments vanish. Once they reach that system, no returns, no communications. The planet there is off the official charts. Might not even be fully terraformed. Dane's stomach tightened. So, the crate might be heading there, or already arrived. Kane nodded slowly. Likely. If you're planning on retrieving it, you're braver or more foolish than I thought. Rumor says they've got security forces, advanced scanning tech, the works. Sarast growled softly. We will deal with them if we must. Kane eyed her warily. Just be careful. The Vigil, or whoever they're working with, are rumored to be involved in ancient relic dealings. This is big time. People who meddle often don't come back. Dane exhaled, forcing a smile. Thanks for the warning. And the intel. That's all we needed. Kane rubbed his hands together. If you live, feel free to drop me a line. I might have a buyer for whatever you find, or a posthumous buyer, as the case may be. Dane gave a curt nod, then motioned for Sarast to follow him out. Once they were back in the station corridors, he paused to gather his thoughts. So, Varlin's Vale. Seems like that's our next destination. Sarast touched his shoulder gently. We do not have to do this. Dane, if you want to walk away, he shook his head. We're past that. The visions we saw, the possibility this thing is a weapon. I can't just stand by. He forced a grin, though it felt hollow. Besides, with you by my side, maybe I'll survive. She gave a soft snort. You will. I promise. They made their way back toward the docking bay, weaving through the bustling crowds. But suddenly, shouts echoed from a side corridor. A figure burst into view, a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13, wearing torn clothes and clutching a small metallic cylinder. Her face was grimy, eyes wide with terror. Behind her, two armed thugs chased, brandishing stun batons. The girl darted frantically, trying to lose them in the crowd. People scattered to avoid the commotion. Dane instinctively stepped aside, but the girl locked eyes with him, desperation plain on her face. She ducked behind him, trembling, the metallic cylinder clutched to her chest. Please, she gasped. Don't let them take me. The thugs approached, glaring. One was a hulking brute with a cybernetic arm. The other, a wiry man with a scar down his cheek. Out of the way, the wiry one snarled, brandishing the baton. That brat stole something valuable. The girl shook her head vehemently. They're lying, before she could finish. The brute lunged forward, swinging the baton at the girl. Dane blocked with his forearm, wincing as the stun baton crackled. Pain shot up his arm, but he gritted his teeth and shoved the attacker back. Sarast growled, stepping between the girl and the thugs. Her hood slipped, revealing her feline features. The men hesitated, clearly uncertain how to handle a Beastwoman. The wiry thug recovered first, jabbing his baton toward Sarast. She dodged with fluid grace, landing a swift strike to his ribs. The brute roared, charging again. But Dane pivoted, delivering a kick to the thug's midsection. The crowd around them muttered and backed away, not wanting to get involved. A few seconds later, the confrontation ended with both thugs sprawled on the floor, groaning. The wiry one spat blood, casting a baleful glare. You'll regret this, strangers. Dane massaged his aching forearm. Yeah, sure, he muttered, turning his attention to the girl. She stood trembling, tears brimming in her eyes. The cylinder she clutched glowed faintly with a shimmering blue light. Who are you? Sarast asked gently. Why are they after you? The girl sniffed, hugging the cylinder. My name's Talia. I was scavenging in the old ruins near the station's underbelly. Found this device. but those men claim it belongs to them. They wanted to, she shuddered. They said they'd sell me if I didn't give it up. Dane exchanged a worried glance with Sarast. The station's underbelly was notorious for black market dealings and forced labor. You're alone, Talia nodded. Been alone since the slavers took my parents. I hide where I can. Please. I won't be any trouble. I don't know what to do. The cylinder in her hands pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. Dane's skin prickled. Another alien device, or a random piece of tech. He couldn't be sure, but it seemed unusual. Sarast crouched, meeting Talia's eye level. You are not safe here. Come with us. She glanced at Dane. We can't leave her here. Dane hesitated, remembering the chaos in his life, the potential dangers ahead. Then he looked at Talia's tear-streaked face, the quiet hope flickering in her eyes. With a sigh, he nodded. All right, we'll get you somewhere safer than this place. Relief flooded Talia's features. Thank you. I'll do anything you need. I just don't want to be alone. Sarast rose, taking the girl's hand. Come, we have a ship. The crowd parted as they led Talia away, leaving the two battered thugs behind. Dane suspected the men wouldn't forget this humiliation, but for now, he pushed that aside. More pressing was the device Talia clutched. It looked eerily reminiscent of the relic's design's arcane symbols carved into its metal casing. Could fate be weaving them further into its tapestry? They hurried to the horizon's wake, adrenaline still coursing. Once aboard, Dane ushered Talia inside, sealing the hatch behind them. The girl sagged in relief, gazing around the ship's cramped interior with wide eyes. Dane gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You're safe for now. Talia. But we need to know more about that device. It's important. She glanced down at the cylinder, biting her lip. I don't really know what it is. I found it in the old sector, hidden in some collapsed corridor. It was glowing, so I picked it up. The men wanted to take it and said something about same pattern as the artifact. I don't understand. Sarast shot Dane a tense look. We must see it properly. Talia nodded and held it out. Dane took it gingerly. His heart skipped as he recognized the same swirling motifs, the same alien script that had adorned the crate's relic. Was this a smaller piece of the same technology, or a related item? It's definitely connected, he murmured, pulse thudding in his ears. We might be in deeper than we realized, but maybe we can use this to figure out how to counter the main relic. Sarast frowned, gently placing a hand on Talia's shoulder. This may be dangerous, child. Are you sure you want to stay with us? Talia's eyes glistened with tears. I have nowhere else to go. Please, don't send me away. A pang of sympathy tugged at Dane's heart. He looked at Sarast and nodded. She stays. We'll keep her safe. Despite the uncertain future, Talia offered a wavering smile. With that silent accord, they formed a fragile alliance, an orphan girl, a beastwoman sworn to protect, and a weary cargo runner who'd stumbled into a cosmic mystery. The path ahead would be fraught with peril, but none of them could turn back now. Outside, in Garrus Rift's grimy corridors, rumors would soon spread about a beastwoman and her companion, spiriting away a street urchin with a strange glowing device. And far beyond the station, in the hidden corners of the galaxy, forces stirred, some seeking to harness ancient powers, others vowing to bury them. Little did Dane, Sarast, and Talia realize that each step they took now was guided by the relic's inexorable pull, drawing them toward a fate as old as the stars themselves. With Talia aboard, the horizon's wake once again left a station in haste. Dane was growing accustomed to hurried departures. Garrus Rift's docking control only raised a perfunctory protest, quickly placated by an extra docking fee that Sorrel Kane discreetly arranged. Within minutes, they were back among the stars. Sarast sat with Talia in the common area, while Dane guided the ship away from the gas giant's ring system. The girl wore ill-fitting clothes borrowed from the crew's meager supplies, her ragged hair framing eyes that flicked with curiosity and anxiety. "I've never been on a real starship before," she said softly, her gaze darting around the interior. "Where will we go now?" Sarast offered a reassuring nod. "We're heading to a system called Varlin's Vale. It may not be safe, but we have to go. There's something there we need to find." Talia clutched the small alien cylinder, which she refused to let out of her sight. "You think it's connected to the bigger artifact?" Dane's voice carried from the cockpit. "We suspect it is. That's why we can't leave it behind. If you want, you can stay here while we investigate." "But," the girl shook her head, voice trembling. "No, I want to help. I don't want to be left alone again. I can learn, do chores, anything. Please." Sarast gently patted Talia's hand. "We will protect you. You will not be abandoned." A faint smile ghosted across Talia's lips. She leaned against Sarast, her guard dropping for the first time. A peaceful quiet settled over them, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. But that peace was short-lived. In the cockpit, a warning klaxon suddenly blared. Dane cursed, eyes narrowed at the console. "We've got to tail 2 ships emerging from hyperspace behind us." Sarast and Talia scrambled forward to see. The sensors displayed a pair of small interceptors, their energy signatures spiking as they accelerated on an intercept course. The comm crackled. "Unidentified vessel. Heave to and prepare to be boarded. Surrender the artifact, and you'll be spared." Dane's jaw clenched. That must be the thugs from Garrus Rift, or at least their associates. They'd wasted no time in calling reinforcements. Sarast's tail lashed with anger. "Cowards. They want Talia's device." Talia's face paled. "We can't let them have it." "It's mine, I found it," Dane grimaced, scanning the star map. The nearest recognized station was days away, and the interceptors had the advantage in speed. "Brace yourselves," he said, flipping off the autopilot. "We're not surrendering." Sarast dashed to the gun turret station, a cramped alcove with an ancient pulse turret. Talia lingered behind the cockpit chair, watching with wide eyes. The interceptors opened fire first, bright lances of plasma scorching the void. Dane jerked the controls, rolling the horizon's wake in a tight corkscrew to evade. The hull shuddered under a glancing hit. Alarms bleeped, warning of shield degradation. Sarast powered up the turret, swiveling to track the lead interceptor. "Firing," she called, pressing the triggers. Bolts of energy spat from the turret's barrels. The interceptor spun aside, narrowly avoiding a direct hit. Dane clenched his teeth. "They're good," he muttered, accelerating to maximum thrust. The battered cargo ship rattled alarmingly, but held together for now. He swung wide, trying to keep the interceptors off their flank. Another volley of plasma blasts lit up the space around them. "We can't outrun them," Sarast warned through the internal comm. "We must fight or trick them somehow." Dane banked sharply, forcing one interceptor to overshoot. "Tricking them might be best," he said, scanning for any environmental hazards. A grin tugged at his lips when he noticed a swirling nebula pocket just a short distance away. "That nebula, perhaps we can hide in it. But it's heavily ionized, might fry our sensors." "We have no choice," Sarast replied, loosing another burst at the second interceptor, which bobbed and weaved expertly. One of the bolts clipped its wing, causing a brief flare of sparks. Dane sped toward the nebula, ignoring the increasingly frantic sensor alerts. "Hang on," he shouted, tightening his grip on the controls. The horizon's wake plunged into the swirling cloud of charged particles. Street Elmo's fire danced across the hull, and the ship's instruments began to flicker. Inside the cloud, visibility dropped to near zero. The external cameras showed only shimmering haze. The two interceptors followed, though with caution. Dane could see their faint silhouettes on the short-range scan, flickering amid the interference. Sarast's turret console fizzled. "I'm losing target lock," she hissed. "Just keep them off our tail," Dane yelled back, guiding the ship deeper into the ionized cloud. Bolts of lightning arced between swirling pockets of gas, lighting up the interior like a storm. The interceptors fired blindly, their blasts crackling in the charged environment, occasionally detonating harmlessly in the haze. Talia huddled behind Dane's seat, eyes squeezed shut as the turbulence rocked them. A fierce jolt slammed the hull, setting alarms blaring again. "We can't stay in here long," Dane muttered, feeling the controls shudder. The ship's systems are taking a beating. Then, an idea struck him. "Sarast, if we can lure them closer, we might be able to cause an overload in their ships with the lightning discharges. Can you draw them in?" Her voice crackled over the comm. "I'll try." With the turret mostly inoperable, she switched tactics, firing short bursts at random intervals to draw attention. The interceptors, emboldened by the near disabling of the cargo runner's turret, closed in to deliver a finishing blow. Dane steered toward a particularly turbulent region of the nebula, where lightning strikes danced almost continuously. "Let's hope this works," he muttered. He skated the edge of the zone, letting the interceptors drift behind him. Then he cut engines abruptly, using momentum to drift. The sudden drop in speed caused one interceptor to overshoot, gliding straight into the heart of the swirling lightning. A massive arc of energy latched onto the ship's hull, sending sparks and flames bursting from its engines. The interceptor spun out of control, smashing into a floating chunk of debris before exploding in a dazzling fireball. Sarast whooped. "One down." The second interceptor dove away, trying to avoid the same fate. It circled, searching for an opening. Dane seized the chance, firing the main thrusters to break free from the nebula's densest section. The ship limped forward, hull plating sizzling. The surviving interceptor emerged from the chaos, battered but still functional. It launched a final volley of plasma at the horizon's wake. Dane cursed, yanking the controls to dodge. One bolt struck the aft quarter, blowing out a secondary thruster. The ship lurched, trailing sparks. Sarast tried to return fire, but her turret flickered and died. "Turret offline," she growled. Dane's pulse pounded. "We're sitting ducks out here," he muttered. The interceptor streaked closer, lining up a kill shot. Talia gasped in terror, but just then, a brilliant arc of lightning from the nebula's edge snaked out, snagging the interceptor's wing. Whether by random chance or the wrath of cosmic forces, the discharge overloaded the small craft's systems. The interceptor spun wildly, leaking plasma from a ruptured line. A chain reaction tore through its frame, culminating in a fiery detonation that vaporized the ship in a flash. Silence fell, broken only by the rasp of the ship's life support fans and the crackling static of the nebula. Dane let out a shaky laugh, relief flooding him. "We made it," he breathed, checking the readouts. "Ship's damaged, but we're alive." Sarast exhaled, stepping into the cockpit. Her fur was slightly singed in places, but she wore a triumphant grin. "That was too close. But we prevailed." Talia unclenched her fingers from the seat, her face pale. "That was. I've never." She sucked in a trembling breath. "Are space fights always like that?" Dane gave a weary chuckle. "I hope not. But sometimes, yeah. They limped away from the nebula, the engines sputtering in protest. With the immediate threat gone, Dane directed the Horizon's wake to open space. "We need to make repairs," he said, scanning for a safe spot. "And we have to do it soon, or we'll never reach Varlin's Veil." Sarast nodded. "Is there a station or planet nearby?" "Not that I trust," Dane said. "We might have to do field repairs with what we have." He grimaced at the damage readouts, one thruster offline. Turret non-functional. Hull plating compromised. It was a tall order. Nevertheless, they had no choice. He found a drifting asteroid big enough to land on, though his heart sank at the thought of repeating the repair routine in the vacuum. "We'll set down there." Talia swallowed nervously. "I'll do whatever I can to help." Sarast placed a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. "Just stay safe. Let Dane and I handle the external repairs." Talia nodded, though worry etched her features. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the cylinder tighter. "Both of you." With that, the Horizon's wake, battered yet unbroken, eased onto the asteroid's surface. The engines powered down, their sputtering replaced by the soft hum of life support. Outside, the void offered no solace, only a stark emptiness. But inside, in that cramped ship, a small band of unlikely allies caught their breath, each mindful that this was only the beginning of a far more dangerous journey. For out there, beyond the swirling clouds of the nebula and the drifting rocks, lay Varlin's Veil, and with it, the secrets of the ancient relic that threatened to upend all they knew. It took nearly a day of backbreaking work in the silent void before the Horizon's wake was spaceworthy again, albeit barely. Dane and Sarast, clad in patched-up EVA suits, braved the vacuum to replace the damaged thruster assembly with spare parts rummaged from the ship's hold. Talia assisted from inside, reading diagnostics and operating the ship's minimal robotic arms. When at last the engines coughed to life, the relief was palpable. Each of them collapsed onto the cockpit seats, exhausted but triumphant. With a final check of the star map, Dane plotted a course for Varlin's Veil. The route took them through sparse starfields and uncharted stretches. The tension among the three was constant, each aware that they skirted a precarious fate. Talia clung to her strange cylinder, occasionally gazing at its flickering symbols with wonder. Dane and Sarast exchanged uneasy glances, whatever this smaller device was. It might be as dangerous or as crucial as the larger relic. Days blurred together, each marked by the thrum of FTL engines and the occasional beep of sensors. They encountered no further pursuit, though every unexpected blip on the scanners set them on edge. At last, after a final hyperspace jump, they dropped out near a dim star orbited by a handful of lifeless rocks. "Varlin's Veil," Dane murmured, his breath fogging slightly in the cold cockpit. Not much to look at. The console beeped, picking up a faint reading, a small planetoid with an energy signature that defied classification. It was as though half-buried facilities flickered beneath the surface, carefully shielded from standard scans. "That must be it," Sarast said softly, pointing to a scarred gray orb. Talia peered over the console. "So that's where they took the artifact." "Likely," Dane replied. "Either that, or some operation run by the same people." The memory of the vigil of the Serpent's warnings lingered, fueling his wariness. But they had come too far to turn back now. He guided the Horizon's wake toward the planetoid, scanning for a safe approach. Automated defense satellites orbited the place, their sensors sweeping for intruders. With the ship's meager stealth systems, sneaking past might be possible if luck held. "Engaging low power mode," Dane muttered, cutting non-essential systems. The cabin lights dimmed to a faint glow. The engines powered down to minimal thrust. allowing them to coast silently through space. With any luck, the satellites would read them as a drifting piece of debris. Sarast hunched over the console, studying the defense patterns. Wait for their sweeping arc, then slip through the gap. Dane nodded, heart pounding. Talia clutched the back of his seat, her knuckles white. Together, they watched the patrol satellites methodically scan the area. Then, in a tense moment, Dane fired a brief burst from the thrusters, slipping into the planetoid's shadow, hidden from direct detection. The satellites continued their rotation, oblivious. A collective sigh of relief escaped them. "We're in," Dane whispered. "Now we just need to find somewhere to land." A craggy canyon yawned across the planetoid's surface, leading to a wide basin. Faint heat signatures indicated some subterranean structure. With painstaking care, Dane lowered the battered ship into the canyon, setting down behind a natural rock outcropping. Dust plumed in the weak gravity, settling slowly. They donned their gear for surface exploration breather masks and warming layers. Since the planetoid's atmosphere was thin and bitterly cold, Talia insisted on accompanying them, refusing to remain behind. Once outside, the three trod carefully across jagged rocks. Overhead, the faint star cast a pale, sickly light. In the distance, a camouflaged vent protruded from the canyon wall, spewing feeble wisps of steam. "There must be an entrance," Sarast muttered, eyes scanning for a hidden hatch or door. Her tail flicked in agitation. The open canyon felt exposed, as though watchful eyes lurked behind every boulder. At last, they found a reinforced hatch set flush with the ground, nearly invisible beneath a layer of dust. A small console blinked with an encrypted lock. Dane knelt, pulling out a portable hacking device. "Let's hope this old gadget still works." As he worked, Sarast and Talia kept watch. The hacking process took agonizing minutes. Each beep of progress felt like an eternity. At any moment, the security systems might alert guards within. Finally, the lock clicked. The hatch hissed open, revealing a narrow shaft descending into darkness. A ladder led down, slick with condensation. Without a word, they descended one by one, sealing the hatch behind them. The corridor at the bottom was dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. Pipes lined the walls, dripping with condensation. The air was thicker here, breathable if unpleasant. The faint hum of machinery vibrated through the floor, a sign of life, and possibly of the relic they sought. They crept forward, the corridor curving gently. At intervals, they passed sealed doors, marked with strange symbols, a stylized serpent coiled around a star. Talia squeezed Dane's hand, her breathing tight with fear. Sarast moved like a ghost, ears angled to catch any hint of sound. At last, they reached a large chamber, a subterranean hangar of sorts, with an overhead crane system and rows of crates. In the center stood the crate, the very one they delivered to Helios Colony. Its lid was open, revealing the cylindrical relic within, pulsing with faint luminescence. Several figures in black uniforms milled about, examining readouts on floating holo screens. Among them stood a tall woman with stern features, wearing a more ornate uniform, bearing the Vigil of the Serpent emblem. She spoke to a technician in hushed, urgent tones. Dane felt his stomach twist. The relic was connected to a massive array of cables that trailed across the floor to a large archway device. Arcane runes flickered across the arch's surface, reminiscent of what they'd seen in the cargo hold's echo. This was more than a mere research project. It looked like an activation ritual. Sarast's lips peeled back in a silent snarl. Talia trembled, clutching her own cylinder close. Something in the relic's glow seemed to respond to Talia's device, as though beckoning. The technician barked commands, turning dials, each motion causing the arch to flicker more intensely. "We have to stop this," Dane whispered. "If they activate that gate or whatever it is, who knows what might happen?" "How?" Sarast asked. "They're many." Dane scanned the chamber. At least a dozen guards were scattered among the crates, but the arch's structure looked delicate, with heavy power conduits running to a central console. If they could disrupt the power flow. Sarast nodded toward a stack of volatile canisters labeled with hazard symbols. One shot there, and the explosion would be significant. Talia swallowed hard. "But we might destroy everything, including the relic." "Right." Dane's expression hardened. "If it's truly a threat, we might have no choice. We can't risk letting them open something that could unleash whatever we saw in those visions." His mind flashed with the memory of cities in ruin, the mournful wail of an alien people. He steadied himself, feeling sweat trickle down his temple. "Sarast, get to that vantage point behind those crates. Set up a shot. Talia and I will distract them if needed." Sarast gripped his arm once in silent acknowledgement, then slipped away, moving with a hunter's stealth. Dane led Talia along a different route, hugging the shadows. The girl clutched her device, eyes darting nervously. Suddenly, a klaxon blared. A sensor had detected their presence. Guards scrambled, raising weapons. The tall woman in the ornate uniform shouted, "Intruders! Secure the relic!" Dane cursed under his breath, pushing Talia behind a crate. Bolts of energy zipped through the air, scorching the metal walls. He peeked out, firing a few shots from his sidearm to keep the guards pinned. Across the hangar, Sarast took advantage of the chaos, scaling a ladder to a catwalk overlooking the stacked canisters. She readied her rifle, steadying her breath. Meanwhile, the technician continued frantically inputting commands into the arch's console. The relic pulsed brighter, and arcs of energy crackled along the archway. It was moments from activation. Talia stared in horror. "They're opening something. A doorway." Dane nodded grimly. "Sarast!" he shouted into his comm. "Take the shot!" Before she could fire, the tall woman spotted Sarast's silhouette and hurled a grenade-like device at the catwalk. Sarast sprang aside, but the explosion rocked the structure, sending her rifle spinning away. She barely clung to the railing, claws digging in. Dane fired at the woman, forcing her to duck behind a console. "We're running out of time!" he yelled at Talia. "We need a new plan." Talia's eyes locked on the swirling energies of the relic. She raised her own cylinder, which began to glow in resonance. I think I can stop it," she whispered. "What?" Dane stared, half dodging incoming fire. "How?" She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "I'm not sure. But it's calling to me. If I can link them somehow, maybe disrupt the energy." The thought of risking the girl in that manner knotted Dane's stomach. But the arch crackled with ferocious power, the device nearly fully powered. "Okay," he said, voice tight. "Be careful." Talia slipped from cover, adrenaline blazing in her veins. She sprinted across the open floor, weaving between blasts of plasma. The tall woman spotted her, eyes widening. "Stop the child!" she bellowed. Guards rushed forward. Dane provided covering fire, picking off one guard, then another. Sarast, regaining her footing on the catwalk, hurled a crate down, knocking two more guards aside. The tall woman aimed a pistol at Talia, but Sarast's fierce roar distracted her, forcing her to dodge a flying piece of debris. In that fleeting window, Talia reached the relic's console. Energy arced around her, crackling with an almost sentient wrath. She lifted her cylinder, placing it against a corresponding pattern on the relic. Both devices glowed, lines of alien script dancing across their surfaces. A surge of power coursed through Talia's arms, and she screamed, but she held fast. The relic's hum spiked, shifting from a menacing growl to a higher, uncertain pitch. Sparks exploded from the archway, sending the technician sprawling. The tall woman roared in fury, charging forward. But Dane tackled her from the side, knocking her weapon away. They tumbled, exchanging blows. Sarast leaped down, claws extended, dispatching the remaining guards with efficient strikes. Talia convulsed, tears streaming down her face. She concentrated on the patterns swirling in her mind, a million voices, a legion of memories. Through sheer force of will, she willed the energies to subside, to break the circuit linking the relic's power to the arch. With a final, deafening crack, the arch's glow vanished. Smoke and sparks erupted from the console. The relic's luminescence dimmed. Talia collapsed to her knees, breathing raggedly. The hangar fell silent, save for the crackle of damaged electronics. Dane pinned the tall woman's arms, glaring down at her. "It's over," he hissed. "Whatever you were trying to unleash, you've failed." She spat blood, eyes wild. "You have no idea. The truth, the ancient war. Humans and beasts are but children before it. This is bigger than you can fathom." Dane tightened his grip. "I don't care. You threatened entire civilizations." A sudden wave of dizziness washed over Talia, and she fainted. Sarast darted to the girl's side, carefully cradling her. The cylinder and relic both lay inert, as if drained of power. Dane disarmed the tall woman, who lay sneering. More guards might be on the way. But for the moment, the chamber was theirs. "Sarast," he called, voice trembling. "Is Talia?" Sarast checked the girl's pulse. "She's alive, just exhausted." Relief sagged her shoulders. Dane exhaled. "We need to get out of here before reinforcements arrive." He eyed the relic. Destroying it might be the safest option. Yet Talia had risked everything to neutralize it. Perhaps it could be sealed away or studied by someone trustworthy. Sarast looked up. "We cannot leave it for them to reclaim. What do we do?" The tall woman snarled from beneath Dane. "It belongs to us. If you think you can hide it, we will find it again." Dane slammed his fist against the console, frustration warping his thoughts. Then he spotted a stasis crate to one side of the hangar, likely intended for the relic. If they sealed it inside, it would remain inactive, at least for a time. "Sarast, help me get it into that stasis crate," he said. He motioned for her to cover him. Carefully, they lifted the cylindrical relic, which glowed faintly at their touch, and placed it in the crate. Sealing it, they heard the hum of containment fields spring to life. Meanwhile, the tall woman struggled, but Dane delivered a sharp blow that rendered her unconscious. He didn't relish violence, but time was short. They had done what they came for, preventing the arch from opening. They would deal with the Vigil's leadership another day, if necessary. Sarast hoisted Talia's limp form gently, and Dane muscled the stasis crate onto a hover sled. They raced through the corridors, expecting alarms or reinforcements at any turn. Luck favored them. Either the facility was understaffed, or the meltdown at the hangar had sown confusion. At last, they emerged onto the planetoid's surface, where the horizon's wake waited, with gritted teeth. They loaded the stasis crate and Talia aboard. Sarast sealed the hatch, and Dane scrambled to the cockpit. No time for stealth now. He fired the engines full throttle, the battered ship groaning in protest as it lifted off. Ground-based cannons spat plasma bolts into the sky, but Dane swerved past them, weaving an erratic course. The momentum pinned them to their seats. once free of the planetoid's gravity well. He engaged the FTL drive. The stars blurred. They had escaped. In the aftermath, adrenaline bled away, replaced by exhaustion. Sarast gently laid Talia in the small bunk. The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open. A tired smile curved her lips. Did we? Sarast brushed hair from Talia's forehead. We did. You did. She glanced at the stasis crate. The relic is contained. For now, the girl nodded weakly, sinking into a healing sleep. Dane set the autopilot on a random heading, far from Varlin's Vale. Then he joined Sarast by Talia's side, pressing a hand to the girl's shoulder. Thank you, he whispered. You saved us all, together. They remained in pensive silence, aware that this was no grand victory, only a reprieve. The relic's mysteries remained, and the vigil would not stop hunting them. Yet, for the moment, they had preserved hope. They had stopped an unthinkable calamity from unfolding. And as the horizon's wake sailed on through the star-flecked void, a quiet bond settled among them. They were no longer just a ragtag crew, they were family, forged by shared trials, determined to face whatever the cosmos hurled their way. Weeks passed since the harrowing escape from Varlin's Vale. The horizon's wake drifted across less traveled star lanes, forever vigilant of vigil scouts and any sign of the artifact's resurgence. During that time, Talia recovered steadily. Though her sleep was still plagued by dreams of ancient battles, her eyes shone with renewed confidence each morning. Dane took on small cargo runs in distant corners, avoiding official spaceways to keep a low profile. Sarast watched over Talia, teaching her basic self-defense and showing her the intricacies of ship maintenance. The girl proved eager to learn, soaking up knowledge like a desert sponge. One quiet afternoon, they gathered around the table in the mess area. Dane, Sarast, and Talia, each with a steaming mug of reconstituted broth. Outside the viewport, a nebula glimmered with pastel hues, painting the walls in soft light. Dane cleared his throat, setting down his mug. "We've been drifting long enough," he began, his voice tinged with resolve. "It's time we decided what to do about this relic for good." Sarast's tail flicked. "Destroy it," he exhaled, glancing at the stasis crate locked away in the cargo hold. "I've thought about that, but we barely understand it. And Talia, she bonded with it somehow, or at least with that smaller device. If we destroy it, we might lose the chance to learn how to prevent another group from building another archway, or continuing that ancient war." Talia fidgeted. "I don't want anyone else to use it for evil, but maybe it holds knowledge that could help heal worlds too. Those visions I had, some were of creation, not just destruction. It's like a repository of an entire civilization's memories." Sarast nodded slowly. "So what do we do?" Dane's gaze turned to Talia. "We find a safe haven, a place where we can study it without outside interference. Maybe we find scholars or a peaceful colony willing to help protect it." Sarast raised a brow. "That's a tall order. The vigil hunts us. Others might try to exploit it for power." "Yes," Dane admitted, "but there must be a corner of the galaxy where wisdom still reigns, even if it's hidden. If we must create our own safe place, we will." He looked between them, feeling an unspoken unity. "We'll do it together." Talia smiled tentatively. "I'd like that. Maybe we can gather stories, knowledge, share it to help people instead of destroying them. That's what the old civilization and the relic wanted. I think someone worthy to carry their legacy." Sarast placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder, her voice soft. "We shall become guardians." Then, Dane felt warmth blooming in his chest. He raised his mug in a toast. to new horizons. They clinked their mugs, each sipping the humble broth. A sense of calm settled over the ship, as though even the battered hull exhaled relief at this collective decision. Over the following days, they charted a course deeper into uncharted space, seeking a rumored enclave of scholars who specialized in xenoarchaeology. The journey was not without peril. Rogue pirates and cosmic anomalies tested their resolve, but each time, they overcame, bolstered by unity and the quiet power of the relic they carried. At last, they found a remote world hidden amid swirling cosmic dust. A small community of researchers, outcast scientists, and empathic caretakers lived there in harmony, devoted to preserving the knowledge of extinct species. Though wary at first, the colony's elders listened to Dane's tale and beheld Talia's connection to the device with awe. After much debate, they welcomed the trio, offering them a secluded lab to safely study the relic's secrets. Under gentle starlight, the stasis crate was opened, its occupant carefully transferred into a specialized containment field. Talia stood by, the smaller cylinder in her hands flickering with excitement. Instead of a violent reaction, the relic pulsed gently, as though content to finally rest among kindred spirits of learning rather than conquest. In the weeks that followed, the colony's scientists worked alongside Talia and Sarast, unraveling snippets of the artifact's ancient data. Dane scouted for supplies, forging alliances with neighboring systems. Gradually, the unstoppable sense of dread that once enveloped them softened into cautious hope. One evening, after a communal feast beneath the colony's glowing trees, Talia, Dane, and Sarast strolled along a nearby ridge that overlooked a valley brimming with luminescent flowers. The air was sweet, filled with the chirping of tiny nocturnal creatures. Talia gazed at the valley, her eyes reflecting the gentle lights. "I never imagined life could be so peaceful," she whispered. "I was always running, until I met you two." Sarast wrapped an arm around the girl's shoulders, her feline ears twitching happily. "We run no longer. This place could be home." Dane exhaled, letting the serenity seep into his bones. He recalled the countless hardships that brought them here: Outpost Illuria's misery, the squalor of Garrus Rift, the pitched battles above unknown asteroids. Now, they stood on a world where knowledge thrived, and the relic's dark potential might be harnessed for good instead of evil. "We'll protect this place," he said softly, looking at Sarast and Talia in turn. "The three of us friends, family, dock crew. Whatever storms come, we face them together." A soft breeze rustled the flowers below, carrying the echoes of distant laughter from the colony. Overhead, the night sky shimmered with 1,000 possibilities. In that moment, they felt a profound sense of belonging, a shared destiny no longer weighed down by fear. Sarast pressed close, her tail curling around Dane's leg affectionately. Talia clasped their hands, tears of joy welling up. In the hush of that alien twilight, they found solace more than a fleeting refuge, but a genuine sense of hope for what lay ahead. Thus, their story reached a turning point not of finality, but of renewal. The relic's shadow no longer loomed as a grim threat, but as a gateway to deeper understanding, a promise that knowledge, properly guided by compassion, could heal even the darkest wounds. And so they stayed, forging a new life. The old cargo runner who once gave away his last ration bar, the ferocious yet tender Beastwoman who pledged her life in return, and the brave orphan girl who held the key to an ancient civilization's memory, bound by fate, tempered by trials, and united in purpose. They faced each new sunrise with gratitude and each starlit night with wonder, forging their own bright path through the galaxy together, and at peace.